Hello, I'm Ron Baker, and welcome to Empowered at Last. Today I've decided to do something a little different. I want to try a number of different approaches on the podcast, which is now only 4 months old, and see what kinds of things you all like the best. I love your feedback, and when you merely let me know whether you prefer one format or another, whether you want more interviews, which I call conversations, because it's much more of an exploration of a subject when I have people on, or whether you like the snippets where I just give you a brief focus for the week, how you can enhance the quality of your life. What I do with the podcast generally is plant seeds about possibilities, ways to make your life better and better and better. I don't go into the depth of the core process that I teach for personal transformation. It's way too involved, and I have ways that you can get that information at ronbaker.net. So what we do here is snippets that give you a place to plug in, focus on some new healthy habits in your life, ways to improve your relationships, your connection to yourself, your communication, your physical health, all different kinds of subjects. When I began the podcast, I said I want this to be a safe place to have a conversation about every single subject on the planet. You are physical, emotional, mental, sexual, and spiritual, and I want to explore every single facet of all of that right here. Generally, the podcast is more practical information, ways you can improve your life, and on my Facebook page, Empowered at Last, I do Facebook Lives. I do that about once a month. There, I tend to go into much more of the metaphysical approach, the spiritual facet of life. I do not refer to a religious approach. I refer to the spirit that is life itself. The spirit, your soul, the bigger picture of life, how we all fit in, what's happening on the planet, why it's happening on the planet, what we can expect in our physical bodies as we continue to move through this unprecedented time of evolution that we're in on the planet. So much expansion and change and waking up and discovering what's out of balance and what doesn't work so well as finding out what the opportunities are of creating more meaningful lives than anything we've ever known. We typically need a context for all that and understanding how to work with the energies that are moving and deepening. So I tend to do all that more on the Facebook Lives at Empowered at Last. So please look that up and get involved in as many places as you so choose. All of those things can be found directly through the main hub of ronbaker.net. So the new thing that I've decided to do today is to take some of the questions that you've been sending in. I adore that you're willing to get involved and that you reach out and that you inspire others, that I really do want to hear your voice. I really do want to give you what you need and desire the most. So please keep sending in your questions, and we will begin today's session by just starting at the top of the list and seeing how far we get. And I'll do more than one episode like this. If you love it, write in, tell me, hit the like button below. It's easiest to make comments on the videos if you're watching the video version of the podcast. It's easier to do the comments on YouTube rather than trying to do those on my website. Alrighty? So, without further ado, let's jump in and do some of these questions. The first one says, I'm ready to step out in a bigger way in my life, and therefore I need to trust myself at a deeper core level. The challenge I'm having is, how can I create more discipline in my life? I know some of the things that I really want, and I want to change certain other things, but actually putting it into practice is a challenge. Thank you so much for your question. I will address several different things here. I love that you're aware that building a trust of self is the core of all of it. Most of us grow up and we get our survival needs. We get our physical needs. We have food on the table. We have a roof over our heads, if we're fortunate. And that level of support is the full extent of support that many people know how to offer. Why is that? If they did not receive, if your parents and the generations before you did not receive a deeper education about self and about life itself, then just fulfilling the structures of life and just showing up so that there's a flow, you can pay your bills, you can go through whatever hobbies and areas of life that you want to invest in, sometimes that is the fullest extent that someone knows how to support. So if we grow up not being taught, how do I connect to self? How do I get more fully in my body energetically? What do I mean by that? Most people, pay attention to yourself over the next little bit, most people end up in their heads, going over thoughts, constant mental exploration, and then look out at life from what I call the observation deck, which is up here in the forehead. Observing life, but not intimate with life. Now, most people don't understand that they're not being intimate with life, because if you haven't experienced a contrast, this seems like the wisest choice we could make. I pay attention, I listen, I am engaged. That very well may be true, but most people don't know how to get down into their bodies energetically, to be intimate with themselves. You cannot experience up in your head. You can observe, you can be excited about something that's happening, but you can't truly experience in your nervous system without being in the body. I give all kinds of ways for you to get more fully in your body in a course online called Claim Your Authentic Self, or Claiming Your Authentic Self. So learning how to get grounded and more fully in the body is really important. When you say in your question, I need to trust myself at a deep core level as I'm ready to step out in a bigger way. That is true. The fact that you're aware of that is perfection. Now, how do I trust myself at a deeper core level? I call this choosing practices that allow you to show up as the adult authority in your own life. If you're showing up for yourself, making conscious choices, nurturing yourself, valuing yourself, investing in your inner self, then your core self will trust you. What is another alternative? What's the unhealthy alternative look like? A ton of people don't realize that in the first 8 years of life, we have our first impressions about life, we have our first impressions about self, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And wherever there are limitations, wherever we end up with impressions of fear, shame, and judgment, we can end up deciding this is how life is. It's from the perspective of a child. Many of you may have heard of the inner child, and it seems like some woo-woo comment. Well, it's not actually. it's scientifically proven that when we are in trauma, we close down, we resist, and we block the energy. If these initial impressions of life as a child leave you with impressions of fear, shame, and judgment, you're going to shut down and bury that energy in an attempt to avoid further fear, shame, and judgment. It seems like a wise choice when we're a 6, 7, 8-year-old. Well, what we haven't understood on a planet that's not educating us about self is that your initial impressions literally program your nervous system, very much like the hard drive of a computer. Putting a program into a computer, well, that's what's on the hard drive of the computer that's right in front of me. Whatever I've programmed there. So your experiences are literally programming your nervous system. So you will find that you might be ruled by the wounded child inside you that got buried, and that's why you're way up here hiding out in your head, and you don't trust the adult part of you. You don't trust your deepest core self, is the way it was worded in this message. So I mention all of these things to give you clues and hints about why you make the same fearful choices. Oh, I'm so afraid of invalidation. I'm so afraid of failure. I'm so afraid that I'll be seen in some way that's gonna get criticized, judged, shamed. And so we make all these adjustments about what we will do, what we will allow, rather than, wait a minute, these are my challenges, but I can show up and deepen how I feel about me, how I value myself, I acknowledge and validate myself, I allow myself to move through a process of trial and error, and I don't have to fear failure. Every single person is failing at various things all the time. We're failing to make the best choice. We're failing to make the progress we thought we would do. We're failing to get everything done that we thought we would get done today. We're failing to remember something. We have the experience of failing all the time. That doesn't mean your life is not functioning quite beautifully. It just means, wow, I need to pay attention to what my particular challenges and failures tend to be. If I didn't have the capacity to feel failure, I wouldn't even recognize the need to make an adjustment. The feeling of failure is not a threat. It is not a comment on how much value you have as a person. So if your adult is showing up, guiding, nurturing, valuing, facing your challenges, showing up and allowing the learning curve of all that, then you will trust yourself and your own value because you're practicing it and you're building it. You're making choices that value yourself, what you need, what you prefer, what you're interested in, and what you're not. If you do those things, you will set yourself up with a capacity to trust yourself as you move out in a bigger way and need that capacity to trust yourself at a deeper core level. Now, the main part of your question was, how do I create more discipline in my life? I know that I need to do certain things, but I don't necessarily follow through. I just prepared the answer for that in a lot of what I said as a foundation. If you have fear, shame, and judgment down in this lower part of your torso, which is where we initially store all of that, if you have a lot of fear, shame, and judgment, and you haven't gone in to nurture the child's impression that was initially seeding that fear, shame, and judgment in your body, if you haven't gone back to re-educate and nurture yourself into deeper perspectives, such as what I just planted about failure, it's not a threat for you to work through failure in all the examples I gave, failure to remember everything, failure to get everything done today. It's not a threat to you. And so if you go in and learn how to nurture those feelings, which again, I teach in this course called Claiming Your Authentic Self, then you will not be ruled by what you fear. You have only two motivations ever in your life. The motivation to move towards something that you know you want, according to your question, or the motivation to move away from what you fear. Oh, I so want this new opportunity, but deep in my subconscious, my child impression is I might have to face a feeling that I fear. Well, if you're not even aware that any of that is going on, then you're going to discover that even though you want and you know and it would be great to have this goal, whatever it is, the fear will likely win out. And so you just find yourself procrastinating. Oh, I don't really have time. I'll do that tomorrow. It would be nice, but I'm not sure. Even just fear of change can run the show. The great news, it's entirely possible to free yourself from all fear, shame, and judgment. If you learn the 9 nurturing needs and how to provide those for your nervous system, and you gather some of the tools for reconnecting to your wounded child, you can literally transform those fears so they're not keeping you from showing up and being more disciplined in moving toward the things that truly matter to you. That is entirely possible. Again, we just need tools and clear approaches. All of my clients make great progress with these things. Everybody has challenges. Everybody has wounding. Everybody has some fear, shame, and judgment. And yet, most people are so ruled by those fears that they don't show up to learn a new, deeper approach to their lives. I hope you will get more involved at ronbaker.net and that you will show up for yourself. You will take courses like Claiming Your Authentic Self, where I teach you how to go inside and literally reclaim all the levels of your being, all of the potentials that you hold, one layer at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just you showing up and spending the same years and decades of your life that you would spend on the same hamster wheel, avoiding the same things that you fear, or you make tremendous progress with your own nervous system, nurturing and resolving layer by layer, getting better and better, freer and freer in your life. That is entirely possible. So I thank you for this question. How do I trust myself more fully on a core level so that I can be more disciplined to move toward the things and actually follow through? Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing all of you again soon. Have a great week, and I will close with this. Choose well, like what we just talked about. Choose well, live fully, and by all means, be good to you. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Before we close, I wanted to encourage a couple of things. Number one is to go to ronbaker.net. There you will find lots of clues for how you can deepen this conversation. You can also find a way to get the booklet, An Essential Guide to the 9 Nurturing Needs. This is going to be a core focus of how we're going to enhance the quality of your life from the inside out in all the episodes. So I encourage you to go there to get an overview of those 9 nurturing experiences that we all seek more than any other thing in our lives. I also want you to get involved in the conversation here. I really would like to talk about the things that are important to you, the things that you're concerned about or excited about. We live in a wacky world that is changing constantly. We need to learn to connect to ourselves, to count on ourselves, and to count on one another. So please either get involved at ronbaker.net or in the Facebook page, which is Empowered at Last with Ron Baker. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to deepening this conversation about life. And I close as always, choose well, live fully, and by all means, be good to you. Have a great week.